Welcome back. You're tuning into Mid-Morning Talk with your host, Mariam Mia. And now I've got joining me discussing the burning issue, and that is the high cost and the rising cost of fuel, what we pay at the pumps. So the AA recently sent out a petition which garnered approximately 25,000 signatures, and their call was for the Minister of Finance to announce a review in his budget speech in Parliament on the 23rd of February as a step towards mitigating against rising fuel costs effectively for the benefit of all South Africans. Joining me to discuss this issue is AA's Layton Beard, and later I'll be joined, just waiting for Stefanie Fick, who's the director at OUTA, to join me as well. We did try and reach out to Reggie Sibaya as well, but they were not available. Good morning, Layton, and welcome to Mid-Morning Talk here on Salam Media.
Thank you. Good morning. Good to be with you.
Thanks. So, Layton, why did the AA feel the need to then ask Minister of Finance or government to review the rising fuel cost?
Well, I think for a number of reasons. I think we've been heading...
Layton, can you hear me? Layton? We just lost Layton now. Layton, can you hear me? Okay, let's just see. Let's take a short break, and we're going to see if we can raise Layton again on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we lost you momentarily. You can go ahead, Layton.
Okay, sorry. So yes, I mean we are in record fuel price territory. We have been since November last year, where the cost of fuel is more than it's ever been. And we are of the opinion that measures need to be taken to mitigate against those rising fuel costs. We have been saying for a long time that a review of the fuel price is needed to establish whether all the components that are on the fuel price are necessary and whether the components that are there are all calculated correctly. We look at, for instance, this issue of the Road Accident Fund levy. We know the RAF is in financial distress. Our view is, do we need to still be paying R2 plus a litre of fuel towards that levy? Is there a better way of managing it? So that's the reasoning behind our call for the review.
So, Layton, I'm sure you've seen that article where Fuel Retailers Association head Reggie Sibaya says that the NEA needs to be more specific in what they want to be reviewed, because if you go on the Department of Energy and Minerals website, the calculations are all there. So have you then engaged with government or Minister of Finance in terms of what aspects you want, or it's a general review?
Well, I think obviously the fuel retailers are entitled to their opinion. They have a specific constituency that they're dealing with. In our view, there can be no harm in doing a review. Even if the review comes up and says that everything that is calculated currently is correct and all the components are there, I think it gives confidence to consumers that the fuel price is correct. Our view is, what harm can a review do? At the end of the day, there are certain components, and I'll mention one specific. The Road Accident Fund is one. I think people want clarity on that, and I think they're entitled to that clarity. So yes, our view will always be and remains, let's do the review, let's see what is needed, and let's see whether everything on there is calculated correctly. Just for the record, the daily breakdown of the fuel price is not available publicly. It's available to certain people publicly, but not to the public. It used to be, but since then the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has censored that information, and it's no longer available publicly on a daily basis, only on a monthly basis. So our view remains, let's look at that fuel price. Are there things on there that we can do better? And if so, let's do them better.
Layton, I've got Stefanie Fick from OUTA, director at OUTA, joining us. So I'd just like to welcome her and let her be part of the conversation. Good morning, Stefanie, and welcome to Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media.
Good morning. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Pleasure. So, Layton, the other question that I'd like to ask you is, can you just give us a breakdown for those who might not know about the different components of what we're paying for fuel. So there's actual price there, then maybe the markup, then the taxes in it. How's it? Or is there additional amounts that we get to the 2019 rand that it is now sitting at?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, basically, the fuel price is calculated on a monthly basis, or it's adjusted on a monthly basis. And the fuel price consists of a number of different components. There is the price that you pay for the raw product. There is a price that you pay to bring that raw product to South Africa. There is a price that you pay to refine it. There is a price you pay to store it. There is a price you pay to transport it. There is a price you pay for the wholesale margin. There is a price you pay for the retail margin. In other words, the people who actually sell it to you. And there are various small taxes that are added onto the fuel price. There are two major taxes that are added to the fuel price. The first is the general fuel levy, which is currently pegged at R3.93 a litre. And the other levy is the road accident fund levy. Together, the two main levies, the general fuel levy and the road accident fund levy, comprise R6.11 of every litre of fuel. Now, we're not telling anybody to scrap the general fuel levy. I think that's a very big debate. I think if you scrap the general fuel levy, you have to find an alternative mechanism to get that amount of money to the coffers of the government every month. What we are saying is let's have a look at all of those different components and find out whether there's a way that we can deal better with them. That's essentially what the AA's position is. And we feel it's a very valid position.
Okay. Layton, I know you have to go shortly. Before I get to Stefanie, has there been a review prior to this, or since maybe 1994, or have we just carried on from prior 1994 and this is how we've gone forward now 28 years into democratic dispensation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, various ministers along the way have often called for reviews. Jeff Radebe most notably has said there's a need for a review. And the current Minister of Finance also said in December, let's relook at the fuel price. Certainly not a review on the scale that the AA is calling for, an open, transparent review where each of these components is interrogated in detail. You know, that type of thing wouldn't have happened in the last 20 years, and that's exactly what we're asking for.
So, Layton, I support you personally because there must be a better way with the rising fuel costs. This means rising inflation, rising groceries, rising transport costs. So, there should be a way, and I am in agreement with you that especially that road accident fund component needs to have a revisit in terms of what we're doing here. So, we support you, and we hope to talk to you in the future in terms of feedback with this. Did you actually did you receive an acknowledgement, by the way, as the AA from the Minister of Finance? I take it you addressed the petition to Minister of Finance. Have you received an acknowledgement?
Not as yet. We will be doing that in an open letter later this week, and hopefully we do get some acknowledgement, perhaps even in the form of a mention when he gives his budget speech.
Good luck with that, and thank you for joining us on Salam Media.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Stefanie, sorry for keeping you on. Welcome there. I'd like to focus now from the outer side with regard to the taxes. So the various taxes is, Layton has mentioned the R3.90 as well as the R2 odd in terms of the road accident fund. What is Outa's view in terms of this taxation that is added to the cost of fuel or the pricing of fuel?
Yeah, so what is interesting is that since the tax year ending in 2009, this fuel levy has increased by over 200%. So from R1.27 per litre to R3.84 per litre, which if you on an accumulated basis equates to 9% per annum, which is, yes, well above inflation. So for the past 5 years, the fuel levy compromise of between 21 and 25% of the price of petrol. So what we are saying is that the minister should seriously consider not increasing, these fuel levies. Point number one. We further say that, maybe he should consider reduction in the current fuel levy to levels charged in 2020 to R3.52, and then also look at are the levies still applicable because you have an enormous amount of levies. And I think you touched on, the road accident fund. They get an enormous amount of these levies, but we still see, is there accountability in this fund? And so you can go on and on. The carbon tax, for example, or the carbon tax as an idea is most probably, a good idea. It was supposed to compel carbon emitters to pay for their contribution to the atmospheric load, of greenhouse gases. But because Treasury is not ring fencing, is these levies going to the right place? It's like the plastic levy. So it's just levy upon levy, making the petrol price shoot through the roof. And are they still applicable? They just increase year on year, and like I've already stated, beyond what they should be. So the minister should seriously consider doing something about these levies.
Stephanie, can you tell us, the public, the listeners out there, this 390 fuel levy, where does revenue then channel this fund to? Does it go to upkeep of roads, infrastructure? So where exactly is that every 390 per litre we're contributing in a fuel levy? What does government then? How do they appropriate this money?
So the levies are collected and it goes into the fiscus. Now, supposedly, then a treasury will decide each and everyone's budget. So then treasury or from this fiscus, the money goes to the various departments. So actually, I can't tell you whether, the percentages or the cents here and the cents there goes to exactly the same. It goes to the departments that actually the purpose for that levy. For example, we know that the RAF gets funds. Are the funds then managed appropriately? Don't think so. They normally bankrupt. And then, for example, the best example I think is the carbon tax. Does it go to the department that's supposed to fight carbon emissions? And I think the answer is no. Does the general public realize how many levies there are, how that is calculated? And then, yes, they pay for it. They don't give us a choice. When you go to the petrol station, you pay a certain amount for petrol. You can't say to them, you know what, I have a problem with the amount of levies or what you do with the levies, because we don't have control over that. So please just put some of it in. And I think what we tend to also forget is the petrol price. Now, the petrol price is directly linked to how much we pay for a barrel of oil, which, we may not have control over. But it's also about the rand-dollar exchange rate, which we may think we don't have control over. But if our, stance on how we're going to create jobs and our whole economic, policy, if that gets better, then the rand-dollar exchange rate will also get better. And that will mean that there's some relief for people that pays for petrol. And the petrol price has got an impact on each and every person in South Africa. You may not possess a car, but believe me, the person that, the retailer that must make sure that the food are in the shops, they need to recuperate the amount of money they spend on petrol. So, it all goes back to the consumer, whether you possess a car or not.
So, Stephanie, I was thinking, when you're speaking about this carbon emission tax, and for me, that is paramount in terms of if we can't, if we canvass government in terms of changing this levy or reducing this levy or that, or maybe then we need to think about or canvass government in terms of how we are taxed. Because if you look at the way in 20 years' time, I mean, the way we see with the electric cars and the new technology, soon cars that are dependent on fossil fuel are soon going to be phased out, where everybody is going to go for a cleaner option. So maybe that is the route that we should be thinking about. A carbon emission tax is one of the ways, and to focus on this, because if, let's say, 60% of all road users then or motorists elect to use carbon, to use electric cars, this levy and that is what you're going to collect. Nothing. And because the demand will be much lower for petrol or diesel or that, there's not the price might drop. So I think government needs to take a long-term view in terms of the way it taxes and the way it collects revenue, because surely this way is exorbitant, but also it's not forward thinking. What is OUTA's opinion in that?
No, exactly. I think we need to consider, and we were discussing it just before, Sona, about, government employees. Maybe there should be something, that they should buy cars that comes, it's manufactured in SA, so that, it's not imported cars, and that, or maybe, government officials should start using, public transport, the public transport that so many people are struggling with. Maybe if they experience public transport firsthand, they would have more sympathy for so many people that is dependent on public transport, and maybe we will see some improvement in that. But yes, I think you have a good idea. What we also need to keep in mind is that, you can't burden a very small tax base. What I think we need to see is, instead of just keep on, and I know that we're talking about petrol levies, but it's part of it. If the petrol levies are scrapped, where will the fiscus get the money that they will no longer get from motorists? But the problem is you are taxing people that you can, you are sort of certain of getting the money. I think we should start focusing on how do we spend the money, because have we seen, the accountability that we are supposed to be seeing? Instead of just adding levies and adding tax, and the taxpayers just the taxpayers is expected to just pay. Otherwise SARS will come after you. So I always get the impression that SARS is getting back on the horse, and they are looking at ways of going after people that's not paying their tax, which is correct. I mean, that is what we should do, but we should also focus on how we spend the tax. And tax is not just, yes, it's taxpayers, but how government spend the tax has got implications for each and every person, whether you pay tax or not. Because if we don't spend the tax appropriately, that's what we're starting to see, is that we have problems with education. We have problems with, health and hospitals, and, that everyone can get proper health care, everyone can get access to education. And these are the things that we do not have, because we have this inability, I think, to spend money in the fiscus appropriately.
That is why, Stefanie, I asked you, sorry to interrupt, and that's why I asked you, do we know actually where does this,
exactly,
road accident fund, we know, I mean, it goes there, and as you've said, I mean, there's numerous articles way back when, I think from 10 years already,
yes,
the issues with road accident fund. We know road accident fund doesn't even own any assets, because the sheriff of the court is there, in terms of they people have institute claimers against them,
yes,
so everything they do is rented. They don't have
yes,
any fixed assets, because I think there are many outstanding amounts that haven't been paid, where cases have been concluded and people are yet to receive whatever was awarded to them, because they are bankrupt, or there's not enough in the coffers to speak. And as you say, there are no mechanisms for accountability, and I think that is worrying. So it's not an issue of South Africans don't want to pay taxes, I think, but the fraud, the misappropriation of
yes,
funds, the wasteful expenditure, I think that's what frustrates us, upsets us, and really it saddens us, and it creates emotional distress, because here you feel, you have to fork out this extra money, you're paying your dues, you're paying your debt, but you're getting no facilities, no infrastructure, no services in delivery of services, and yet you just keep on having to pay. And I think that's what the frustration, maybe I think a call on tighter mechanisms and transparency in terms of how funds are appropriated and spent.
Oh, I couldn't have put it better. So let's start looking at, for example, the RAF. Let's look at, the board. Let's look at how that is, the people that's appointed. Look at your executives. Look at, the people. Do they have appropriate, do they have appropriate experience in the field? Let's eradicate the corruption that is happening at the RAF. Because why is it there? I think, various reasons why we have the RAF, but I think let's consider the fact, someone driving in a taxi, big accident, who is going to compensate that person for injuries and so forth. And that's why the RAF is there. But if we can't make sure that the money that the RAF receives are spent appropriately and people that is misspending, misadministration is not addressed, then you know what? We can't just keep on paying. Somewhere along the line, there needs to be accountability. Agree with you 100%.
Stephanie, thank you for your time and your input. And is OUTA maybe in principle or in support, or that for the AA's review, is OUTA supporting the AA's review? Maybe not officially, but in principle, in terms of the review on this whole, how is the fuel amount then comprising of, and a review of the taxes?
Yeah, of course. I think we are sort of, speaking from the same mouthpiece. So, we will support anything that will bring back, accountability and look at the way we just go on, increases these levies, and that motorists do not have control over what they pay and not pay. So yes, I think I can say that, we support anything in that sense.
Thank you for your time, and hopefully we can chat again sometime in the future in terms of holding our public representatives accountable in terms of how they
Yes.
spend our money in our country. It's not for the private purse and for private gain. So looking forward to chatting to you sometime in the future.
Thank
And
you.
we'd like to commend OUTA for being there for the public and also being our eyes and ears and calling out government when tax is abuse. So thanks so much on behalf of everyone at the Salam Media team. We'd like to say we acknowledge you for the sterling work you do, and we're so proud we have a watchdog organization such as OUTA.
Oh, thank you so much. And, thank you to media, like you guys and all our supporters. Without this support, we will not be able to do what we are doing. So, from us as well, thank you so much.
Okay, that was Stefanie Fick, and she's director of OUTA. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, yes, we are going to be speaking about the trending issue of the day, the racism issue that is flaring up in Randfontein.